My name is Sharon Milliman. I live in West Virginia. Okay, so my second NDE happened in 2005 in the summer, and I was sitting on the back steps of my house talking on a cordless phone, and it began to rain. And I heard thunder, and then I heard a loud crack, and a lightning bolt came out of the sky and hit my right arm. And when it did that, I felt this burning, searing, agonizing pain. And the lightning went through my body and then traveled underneath the house, and it left, and it blew the transformer that was right in front of the house. But once it hit me and went through my body, it left black char marks on the concrete steps. And I had felt that pain, that burning, searing pain. And that only lasted for like a minute. And then I just peeled up out of my body. My spirit just came right up out of my body. And I didn't even know I was dead at that point. And I went into my house and I start looking around, and I noticed that everything has this burnt gold look to it. And I looked at my curtains that were in my kitchen, and they weren't mine. And then I went into my dining room, and the furniture wasn't my furniture. It was my house, but nothing in it was mine. And I was getting very confused about what was going on. And like I said, I didn't know I was dead, so I couldn't figure out where people were in the house. Why was this furniture not mine? And then I heard this old time radio, and it was playing. It sounded like something from back in the 20s or 30s. And I couldn't find it. I was looking everywhere for this radio, and I thought, well, there's no power. I knew something had happened, but I didn't know I was dead, and I just couldn't find whatever was making that radio sound. And then, just about the time I started to panic, there was this huge, loving, formless presence that appeared, and I mean, he was huge, and he just filled me full of this peace and this love that I've never felt in my entire life. And I wasn't afraid anymore. And it was like he just picked me up in his big arms, and we started moving sideways. I didn't go up and I didn't go down, but I went sideways, got this presence, and I went sideways. And we were moving very, very quickly through these, what looked like beautiful pink and gold clouds. And when we got to the end of the clouds, there was it was the most beautiful garden. And the sky was blue, and the air was real sweet, and the colors were very vibrant. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I could hear birds singing, and the flowers were colors. I don't even have words to tell you what colors they were, but like the pinks were pinker, the reds were redder, yellows were brighter yellow, much more so than what you see here. And I still didn't know at that point that I was dead. So I really didn't know what was going on. I was kind of just going with the flow. And two men came forward. As we moved a little bit further into the garden, two men came forward and greeted me. And at first I thought they were angels, but then it hit me because they were wearing this real expensive, finely woven linen clothing. and they were glowing, and I thought that they were angels. And then it hit me like instant divine knowledge. I was like, oh my God, no, those were my two brothers who had died when they were babies. And I was only a baby when they died. So had never met them. But it was like instant knowledge that these were my brothers. And when they smiled, they looked exactly like my dad when my dad was a young man. And they were so beautiful. And there was this just amazing, beautiful family reunion. It was so wonderful. And I kept telling him, Dad would be so proud of you, because they were so beautiful. And they appeared to be about the age between late 20s and early 30s. So actually, they were the ones that had to tell me I died. And when they told me I died, I was like, okay, I can do this. This is okay. Because I wasn't afraid. I felt so much love and so accepted. And that was one of the big things that I couldn't get over. And when they told me that I had died, I looked down the front of me and I could see my hair like coming down the front, and I could see my body, and I was a better version of me. And I could see my clothes and my feet. I could feel the grass. So I had all of my senses. But everything was very heightened, extremely heightened. I could see like all the way around without turning my head. And I could see far distances, great detail. And, but I looked down the front of me and I could feel the grass on my feet, and this was sweet smell of like freshly cut grass. And so, well, once they told me, I was like, okay, I can handle this. This is all right. And then, so we moved a little bit further into the garden, and there was a bunch of other people that started to gather around me, and they were like from all different time periods. The women were in these beautiful dresses, and some of the men were in fancy suits. And then there was other people that were dressed, like we dress today. So I just knew that they were from different time periods, and I knew them, but I didn't know where I knew them from. And they all gathered around, and not one of them was over, like, they were between late 20s, early 30s. So I didn't see any old people. I didn't see any sick people. I didn't see any people hurting or crying or anything like that. Everybody was young and glowy, just so beautiful. And just, it was incredible. And they just gathered around me and just loving me. And then it was time for my life review. And that's when the big, huge, loving presence went from beside me to behind me. And my brothers got on either side of me. And then all these other people, they gathered around. And it was time for my life review. And what I saw was like an old-fashioned screen. And I'm watching like a black and white movie and going really fast, like on an old-fashioned movie reel. So it's going really fast. And it was my whole life. I saw myself as a little kid, and it was just from the moment I was born all the way up until that moment that I died in my backyard. But there was, it was like over in a blink of an eye, just like a snap of a finger, and it was done. And I thought, wow, my life must be really boring because it's over so quick. And I asked my brothers, like, okay, something's missing. What's missing? Something's off here? What is it? And they just kind of grinned. They weren't going to tell me anything. And I was like, really, you're going to do this now? But they never really answered. But what I got out of it was that this huge loving presence was God. And God at that time did not take on a form. He was just a spirit. And he was huge. And all he did was love me so completely. And all of those people that were around me loved me so completely and accepted me totally. And there was no judgment at all. And I didn't know that I was supposed to be judging myself. And so they didn't judge me and I didn't judge me, and there was no judgment. And so that's why it was over so quick. And then I heard a male voice say, what you put out into the universe will come back to you. And I had never heard words like that, so I didn't know what that really meant. But then as we kept walking, it was like I felt like I was hooked up to a giant IV bottle of knowledge. There was this like divine wisdom, and I was being infused with all this knowledge, and part of that was being shown what those words meant. And what I was taught was that, or what I was shown was this, I call it the boomerang effect, where you throw a boomerang and it gets faster and faster and it comes back at you. Well, that's kind of like what happens with our thoughts and our words and our actions, and how we treat people here, and what we do goes out into the universe, spins, gains momentum, and then comes back and like a boomerang, and will just smack you right in the head. You don't know when it's coming or how it's coming, but it will come. And so that kind of made me realize I better be a good girl, keep my mouth shut, be nice and loving and compassionate and kind and those kinds of things, because that's what I want to come back to me. I don't want that, that other stuff. So we kept walking, and I was getting more knowledge as we were walking around in the garden. And I, like who God is, what God is, how the universe was put together. And I kept saying to God, you're so awesome. This is so awesome. You're so cool. And I told him, I said, you're so simple. And us human beings make you so complicated, and you're not complicated at all. And I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, because he was so, he's not what everybody makes him out to be. And so as that was going on, I was looking around, and I heard this music, and there was music that was what I call big music, huge, big music, many instruments, lots of like orchestras put together, drums and pianos and stringed instruments and that kind of stuff. And I noticed that everything had a vibrational sound. The trees had a sound, the rocks had a sound, the water had a sound, the grass had a sound. And when you take all of those individual sounds and you put it together, you have the most magnificent choir and orchestra that you've ever heard in your life. And everything is singing praises to God. And so I was just kind of, all of this stuff was happening. And I'm sure I was only there for a couple minutes, but it seemed like I was there for weeks and weeks and weeks, because there was no time. There was absolutely no time. And so after I heard the music, I started to, I could see like this what I called the glorious city, and it was off in the distance a bit. And there was a wall, golden, it was a bright wall that goes around the city. And in the middle of the city is a round building. I mean, there was lots of buildings, but there was a big round building in the center, and it had a golden dome on it. And then I saw some buildings on the outskirts of the city. Like I saw a place where babies and children go, and they're loved and cared for, and they're running around and playing and having a wonderful time. And they were all different, like, ages and stages. And so they have, when babies and children die, there is a place that they go, that they're loved and cared for by their, past loved ones, angels, whatever. I saw another building that had, now all these buildings are made of like alabaster marble. They're just beautiful, and the architecture is like, there's columns and archways and intricate detail carved into the marble. And there was I saw what I call the Hall of Knowledge, but I don't know if that's what it's called, but it was like a library, and it had a bazillion books from top to bottom, from ceiling to floor. And it was about every subject you could possibly want to know anything about. You can go in there and get one of those books, and you get this knowledge. And I saw another building that had these beautiful healing pools, like swimming pools out in the back behind it. I was like, oh my gosh. Just absolutely beautiful. The water was like living water. It was just like alive. And it was like a spiritual hospital for people who have died like a traumatic death or suicide. There's mentors and teachers and angels and people that are there to help bring these people gently to the awareness of what's happened to them. And everything in heaven is very gentle. It is very beautiful. So they're loved into wholeness, and loved into the understanding of what happened. And then I saw, there was this one room that I saw that was absolutely magnificent. It was a party room. And it had a big, huge chandelier, and it had a guy in the corner playing this giant, beautiful, gorgeous piano. And there was people dancing and laughing and talking. And there was a pink blush carpet on the floor, and these expensive paintings on the walls. And on the opposite side of where the piano was, there was a table that had this expensive white linen on the tables. And then there were silver trays. And then there were flowers, huge flower arrangements and candelabras, and it was just magnificent. But there was fruits and vegetables and meats and pastries and breads and just every kind of food you could possibly want on these silver trays. And the women were in these beautiful dresses of, like pink and purple and blue and yellow and red, and the flowers on the table matched their dresses. And then there were men in tuxes and fancy suits. And there was a butler, and he was walking around, and he was holding a silver tray on his hand like this, and he was passing around champagne glasses. And that's all I saw of that. I don't know what the party was, what they were doing, but it was so real, and it seemed so magnificent and festive and joyful. And So I saw that. And then, so we're sort of in the middle of the garden by this time. And I'm just like in shock over all of it. It was so gorgeous. And there's a grove of trees over in the corner. And by the, off to the side from the wall or the city there. And people have asked me what the trees were, and I have no idea what they were. But Jesus walks out of the grove of trees and he comes up to me. And when he does, my brothers disappear and I don't know where they went. But what he said to me was, I love you, I'm with you, and don't be afraid. And that was my first clue that I was going to be sent back, but I didn't catch it. It went over my head because I was just, staring at him. It didn't dawn on me that what he was saying was, we're sending you back. So he was solid. It wasn't just an image. He had the long, dark colored hair. He had a dark olive complexion, kind of looked glowy, kind of like everybody else was glowing. So he looked like he had a tan maybe on top of the darker skin. He had beautiful brown eyes. And he was breathtaking, just breathtaking. And now I've seen him several times because he's visited me several times physically, not in dreams or visions. And this was the only time I saw him in a robe. And he certainly did not look like the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus that everybody thinks of. But he was absolutely breathtaking. And so he leads me over to this wooded glen, and there was light coming through the branches, and there was a log laying there, and a stream. And I sat down on the log, and when I sat down on the log, Jesus walked away. And there was a man sitting on the other end of the log. And I knew that man was God. So that huge, loving, formless presence that God was at the beginning had now taken on a form. And I knew that form was not, it was the face he chose for me to see. And he was beautiful too. He was an older, I want to say an older version of Jesus, but not, maybe an extension. Jesus was a younger extension of, I don't know how to put it more. I'm sorry. But anyway, he looked totally different. He had short, black, curly hair, blue eyes. His skin was not as dark. So he did look different. And so we're sitting on the log, and he turns to me and he says, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I said, "What?" I did not understand the question. And he said, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I still didn't understand the question. And so he just grinned at me, and he said, "Come with me." So we get up and we go and we move further into the wooded glen, and there was a clearing. And in the clearing, as he kind of waves his hand, and he opens up the sky, and I can see the vastness of the universe. I could see the spinning planets and sparkling stars and these rainbow-colored gases. But there were no buildings and no trees and no people and no cars and nothing. It was just all that stuff and nothing. And I looked at God and I said, if it's all of that and just me and you, you would be sick of me after the first 10 minutes with all of my questions and chatter, and you wouldn't like me anymore. So no. And when I said that to him, he threw his head back and he laughed. And when he laughed, it made me laugh because, I mean, his laughter is so contagious. And his eyes were sparkling. And it was kind of a cute, funny situation. And I felt really, oh my gosh, did you just say that? God. And so then we went and we sat back down on the log. And he asked me again, and he said, well, what would you do if it was just me and you? No mom and dad, no husband, no children, no friends, nobody, just me and you. And I just kind of looked at him and I was like, I really didn't know what to say even then. And so I'm looking at this tree and it kind of, draws my attention away from the question. And all of a sudden I'm starting to think these thoughts, and I don't know where they came from, whether they were God that put them in my head. But I said, just out of the blue, and I have no idea why, I said, God, your 100th name in the Quran is God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is in me. And he said, yes, that's right. And I never read the Quran. I've never seen the Quran. I don't know anything about it. So I was kind of shocked at myself and I would come up with something like that and that it was right. And then I said, as I'm looking at the tree and I see the detail of the bark and the roots beneath the ground pulling the nutrients out of the soil, and the nutrients go up into the leaves, and the leaves clean the air, and we breathe the air. And so everything is connected to everything, and every single part is very important to everything else. And I'm sure that God put that in my head too, because I wasn't one to think that way. So I looked at God and I said, God, you made this tree. You are in this tree. So when I see this tree, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. And then I started thinking about my parents, and I said the same thing. God, you made my parents. You are in my parents. So when I see my parents, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. Well, I said the same thing about my children. And then I got kind of sad because there have been people in my life who've said really horrible things that hurt me very deeply. And I started thinking about that person, well, those people. And I said to God, God, there are people in this world who hurt other people on purpose. They just hurt people, but yet you made these people, you are in these people. So when I see these people, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. He said, now I have a question for you. And I was like, oh my Lord, I didn't know what to, I thought, oh my, I'm not going to do well. But he said, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And I didn't know what to say back at first, because my first answer would have been nothing. Because my whole life, I've been told you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, whatever. And so I didn't know what to say. I mean, that's not something you tell God. And so I said, well, you made me, you're in me. So when I look in the mirror, I see you. And he said, yeah, that's right. And he was so happy. His eyes were sparkly and he was smiling, his gorgeous smile. And he was just, and I felt like a little girl who just passed a test, I was happy that he was happy. But what he was basically telling me was, I don't make mistakes. I don't make junk. And you are not all of the things that those people in this world are telling you that you are. You are not what the world makes you to be. You are what I make you to be. And I love you. And that, that's what he was telling me. And So that was huge for me. That we do take on the junk of the world, and we do believe what the world teaches, and we don't hear what he's saying. And then after that happened, there were two angels that came and got me, and they took me to this lake, and it was so beautiful, but it was like looking into glass. It was so calm. And so I lean over and I look into the water, and I can see the earth below. And what I'm seeing was it was like it was right up here in my face, and I could see all these things happening. And so this was like back in 2005. And so what I was seeing is stuff that's happening now. So I saw future events, and the collapse of money, the terrorist stuff. I saw just lots of things. But what the angels told, I didn't know what to do with it when I saw it all. And the angels were saying, but these things don't have to happen. It's up to you all. Your collective human selfishness is what is causing these things to happen. And you can change this. These things don't have to happen. But they have happened. At least what I've seen so far has happened. So they're saying there's time to change, but we have to make that change. And then I was sent back to my body, and I'm if I had a discussion, a conversation about whether to come back or not, it was probably not a good one, and that's why I can't remember. But I do have a right bundle branch block in my heart from the lightning and seizure disorder. So, but that's my second near-death experience.